Welcome to the Awakening podcast, where we have truth tellers and not whistleblowers, where we have facts and not conspiracy theorists, the podcast with solutions. You can find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Today, I have a wonderful guest, Sandi Adams. Please welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Roy. Thanks for having me on.
So I know you're doing a lot for a few years, but you might just tell the audience first, who's Sandi Adams?
Who am I? I'm just a researcher. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother, very concerned about what's happening in our world. And I discovered, well, I discovered, I got into looking at Agenda 21 about 10 years ago. And the more I researched, the more I realized that it is there. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's been actually implemented incrementally over the last 30 years and more. And it originated really from the Club of Rome, various Club of Rome reports. And then it was actually put into a document in 1992 at the Earth Summit. And since then it's become Agenda 2030 in 2015. So I will go into a bit of the history of it, but it's very difficult for people to get a grasp of all the implications of Agenda 21 2030 because it is so complicated and it's designed to be so that people don't really notice it happening. And it's in every town council in the UK, the policies of Agenda 21 2030. And that's all happened very, very stealthily, actually, over a long period of time. And really, I got into it. I began to research it. The more I researched it, the more I realized that it was actually happening.
Was that your awakening moment? Is it like 10 years ago or prior to that? What kind of...
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago that I began to research. I used to work in London with the problem with GlaxoSmithKline and with Google, and I was working on live events. I was a set designer, and I was working on live events, and I realized that actually there's when they're doing their presentations and they say what they're going to be doing, and I could see that there was something really odd. I actually met Bill Gates once. I was working for Microsoft, creating environments for him to put his technology in to showcase it. So I was working in the live events industry with, and I began to look at it and thinking, there's something sinister about what is happening here. And when you look into it and join the dots, you see that it's all linked. And so I left that. I had a bit of a moment where I actually changed my life in 2009. And I began to research this properly, and I changed my job. I set up my own business, which is just a fun music live event business. Or live. It's a pub music venue. So that's how I got my income. I gave up the big time and just focused on something local. And I went into Agenda 21 really deeply. And found that there is this huge top-down global governance agenda to implement control and inventory of the entire planet. And that sounds like a huge thing to say, but it's true. And it was confirmed to me in 2014 in Somerset here. We had the flooding of the Summerset levels, and I traced that back to Agenda 21 to reclaim some land that had been actually put into a policy document with the Environment Agency coming out of the United Nations Ramsar Treaty, which was about flooding wetlands for the environment. So, and people lost their homes, their livelihoods, everything. I mean, there was something in the region of 65 square miles of Somerset was underwater, and it's never gone back to normal. And people have lost their livestock, their farms, and it's never gone back. And that was provable because I found Policy 6. Anyway, it's a long story. I found Policy 6 of the Environment Agency, and that area had been designated to flood in 1997 by Baroness Young. So it was all linked back to Agenda 21. So that confirmed it. So I really got on board, and I was doing a talk at a festival on Agenda 21 when I met Piers and Mark, and then we went on a roadshow for 2 years. Sort of talking about it, and since then we've been doing all our own stuff because it's just got so crazy right now. We're just all putting out as much as we can.
And I see like Piers got arrested with the protests last week. They waited till he was And you could see, because I've seen some videos, I mean, he's 73, I believe. Like, they were
Yeah,
manhandling him. He wasn't being aggressive or anything. They were really manhandling him, and they were annoying the police. Like, the people outside were going ape over this. They could see that it wasn't right what was going on.
Of course, and it's not right. It's not right what's going on, and now you know, we've got these wardens, these COVID wardens being trained by the government, who are going to be marshalling everything, going into businesses and saying, well, you're not complying enough, you've got to, and you get a fine. You know, this is totalitarianism. This is you know, this is really not a free country anymore. And I'm absolutely convinced we don't have a government. I think we have, it's occupied, and we don't have nothing is mandated at the moment. All of this legislation that's going through is not mandated. So there are people on the legal side of that, which I don't understand. I don't profess to understand anything legal or lawful or whatever. Well, I do understand a bit about lawful, but unfortunately, you know, this has to be fought with the high courts, and proved to be against democracy. And, you know, there are people, thank goodness, doing that at the moment, and taking that and really getting a handle on it. So with a bit of luck, we have to fight this with all our might. This is not a human agenda.
My fear with that, because I have seen through, just like, I've had a lot of court cases, unfortunately, and if you look at most countries, when the government changes, the top judges change. So if you're in a court, you're having a judge that usually is told what to say.
Yeah.
And that's my fear in this situation.
Yeah, and we don't have a proper process, a due process at the moment, where the whole thing is done by judges in sealed chambers, and they make deals with each other, and it's really very corrupt, as we know. There's no grand juries. There's no, like it used to be. It used to be you were judged by your peers. You're not anymore. But that isn't really my field. I can't really get into that. But you probably know more about it than I do. But all I've done really is research what humanity is facing, and what humanity is being groomed for, and it's absolute. I mean, it's getting worse by the day. And what I started off sort of researching, thinking that this was something that could easily be overturned, because it was all based around climate change at first. Now, if I go into very basically what Agenda 21 is, it's a top-down global governance control system, which was brought about by various Club of Rome reports, as I said, stretching right back from the 1970s. The first one was something called Limits to Growth, which was all about stopping GDP and stopping growth. And then there was a second one, which was Our Common Future, which was all about distributing money across the globe from what they called I think they called it the developing rich to the non-developed countries. But that was actually a bit of a blindside, because the money that was actually provided to the developing countries actually went into big tech and big pharma, and it didn't really go to the people, because they found that they could outsource all the pharmaceuticals and the tech to other countries which had a cheaper labor force. And then the third one was one in 1991, I think it was, which was called the First Global Revolution, where they would it was a think tank. All these are done by think tanks, by the Club of Rome, which is really the driver of the United Nations. Because all these Club of Rome reports were implemented by the United Nations, particularly.
So just for those that don't know what the Club of Rome is, because some people are probably thinking it's the Pope on a Vespa. Like, you might just let people know.
Well, it might well be. No, the Club of Rome, I mean, how do they describe themselves? They describe themselves of a group of powerful individuals who are there to help mankind develop, basically. And but they make themselves sound very benign. And we do look at the Club of Rome website. It's very clear that they are, you know, they're all behind. It's like all of the Club of Rome. They're all linked. All these big organisations like the Trilateral Commission, the Council for Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the WEF, you know, the people that meet at Davos, you know, the World Economic Forum. All of these people, groups of people, they're usually very rich, powerful individuals. The person who headed up the Earth Summit in 1992 was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and his name was Maurice Strong, and he's a very powerful person, very charismatic, very influential, and he set up the Earth Summit in order to bring about this top-down global governance, using anthropogenic global warming as the way of doing it. And again, it's a scare tactic. It's, if you don't do this, you know, and save the planet, then the planet will die. And of course, everybody, 179 countries signed up to United Nations Agenda 21 in June of 1992. Under Maurice Strong's, you know, and when you look at his history, the guy he's a convicted criminal, or he was, he's dead now, but he was a convicted criminal. He got very involved with the oil for food scandal with Adnan Khashoggi, and he was exiled to China, and he's very comfortable in China. His sister lived with Mao Zedong, and he loved China. He loved the whole Chinese system, the social credit system and all that stuff that was emerging. And he kind of was weaving this into Agenda 21. And, you know, at there's a quote from the first global revolution, where they actually made up the whole climate change thing. Because the first global revolution, as I say, was a think tank where they were chucking around ways that they could unite humanity with a common threat. And again, this is how they do it. It's a psychological operation. And this is a quote from the first global revolution, which was one of the birthers of the Earth Summit. The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea of pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it's only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So we are now the enemy, and we have been for a long time. And the whole thing with global warming was to create this fear that if you didn't conform to a certain way of thinking, which was the Green New, well, now we know it's the Green New Deal, but then it was actually the Green Party which became infiltrated in 1992 by the globalists. And there's friends of mine who, including David Icke, he's not a personal friend, but a friend of mine, Justin, who was with David Icke at the time when they were in the Green Party. I was in the Green Party at that time, and it became a different beast. It was the Ecology Party, and it was a grassroots party which was really cared about the environment. But this is really pushing forward a technocracy which is anti-green. It's not a real green policy, it's a fake green policy. It's
I had David Icke on the show, and he even said that he joined it for a different reason.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, he and Justin were mates in the Green Party years ago. And, I've met David. I think he's a very sound person, as you would have found, when you interviewed him. People say, oh, he's not to be trusted. He, 100%. I know that he started, his roots were in the original Ecology Party, as were mine. And we, all of us saw this beast changing into something different. And then I thought, oh, I'll join Transition Towns. And I thought that was all, controlled as well. I thought that would be a good thing to join, and that ended up, I set up a transition town in London at the time, in Peckham and Nunhead, and I came and lived here, but I realized that was all infiltrated and controlled as well. So, suddenly we're getting grassroots movements being controlled, and it happens all the time. And we have to be very careful who we affiliate with and who we work with, because there's always going to be that element of infiltration and control to try and break, the will of the movements, of the truth movement.
No, definitely.
So, yeah, so, so the thing with Agenda 21 was that they implemented all of this this green stuff in the 1990s, but at the same time the movers and shakers behind it set up the carbon banks and the financial instruments to profit from carbon taxing and carbon offsetting. And President Obama with Al Gore, and Al Gore was a big driver behind the Earth Summit, as was Maurice Strong and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and many green activists were paid to actually push all this. And the IPCC was set up to push the fake science of that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, was set up to push the fake science of the Earth Summit and what they were trying to push forward. And what happened was, of course, they created all these financial instruments that have made them very, very rich. And this is another way that they were going to create a new economy, get rid of the price-based economy, which is happening now, which is everything's crashing, and replace it with a carbon economy, which is what this Green Reset is all about. And if you look on the World Economic Forum's website, they're talking about a global reset, which is actually getting rid of GDP. And that is a big thing at the moment. I mean, I will read a quote from them in a minute. But the thing is that these carbon credit banks were there to profiteer from this fake green economy and fake green movement that they were putting forward about anthropogenic global warming. And so that sort of did move quite a bit, they were gaining pace with that. But what has happened since, obviously, is that it wasn't moving fast enough. And somehow this pandemic has speeded it up. And it's interesting now that they're weaving the pandemic in on all of these websites, like the United Nations website, the World Economic Forum website, the International Monetary Fund. All of those are weaving the pandemic in to actually bring in this agenda to fast track it. So there is evidence that this is actually all been planned, and this is a way of really creating and pushing forward the global governance and the control that they've always wanted for the last 30, 40, even beyond years. And we're living at this time. It's a very exciting time to be living, because we're at a pivotal time for humanity. And if we don't actually stand up and fight this, there will be no humans. There will be there'll be nothing left, because the end game of this, the end game of Agenda 21 2030, and it's all in. This is Agenda 21. There we go. You can get it you can get it at your bookstore if you want to send off for it. But out of Agenda 21 came the action plan, which is this. This is the Global Diversity Assessment, and it's huge. It was a lot
of reading in that.
Yeah, it was created straight after the Earth Summit in 1997. It was published, and it is the plan. The plan, it's all laid out in this book. It's an inventory of every single thing, every resource, everything on the planet, and how it's going to be controlled, how it's going to be used by this global governance, and the end game is to actually get everyone out of the countryside. Man is so bad. Man cannot live in nature. Man is a destroyer of nature. So you have to remove man out of the equation, put them in the smart cities, which are all being created, as we know, under 5G, and live in this surveilled, controlled environment. And this is all in the Global Diversity Assessment. They call them human settlement zones. And it's not, this isn't in any way a conspiracy theory. It's all in there. On page, I think it's 994 or 993, they talk about human settlement zones, the rewilding project of America, where most of America is given over to the wild, and there's these little dots on the map of human settlement zones. And there's, this is global. This is actually
pictures in China where there's massive cities built. They're called ghost cities, and they're planning to move the people into
Of
them. So
course.
if that doesn't wake people up, I'm not sure what will.
Exactly. I mean, this is it. I mean, people keep thinking this is just a virus and it'll be over soon. It will not. This is it. This is going to get worse. And I keep having conversations with people and they say, why are you being so negative? And I say, I'm not being negative. And even my son said the other day, Mum, you're the most positive person in the world. Why do you dwell on all this? And I said, because I wouldn't be, in my heart, I know we can overcome it. I'd be very negative if I thought we couldn't. And if we can do something about this, and we really do have to gather and not comply and really get this going, because this is the end. You know, if we don't do it now, when will we be able to do it?
No, I totally agree with you.
You know, it's a really difficult one. And the crashing of the economy, I think, is key, because the World Economic Forum, now this is what they say about, the World Economic Forum website: is our love affair with gross domestic product coming to an end? As the business landscape reinvents itself, demographics shift, equality expands, climate change gets worse, and technology advances at breakneck speed, gross domestic product is struggling to stay relevant. Now, this is our trade. This is GDP is our trade. This is the way the whole world works. They say, in order to keep up with the changes wrought by the fourth industrial revolution, so they're on board with Extinction Rebellion and the fourth industrial revolution. Many are arguing that we need to find a new measure to assess the health of our economies, and more importantly, the people living in them. Well, that's an important thing. We're examining the past, present, and future role of GDP and the new economic models that could replace it. Now, replacing it is the Green New Deal: carbon taxes, universal basic income, living in smart cities, being surveilled. But the biggest one is data harvesting. And I'll get onto that in a minute. It says the World Bank and the IMF are being asked to throw away their rule books to save the world's imperiled developing economies. But when the pandemic passes, a fiscal reckoning in some form will be essential. After all, the bill for the pandemic will one day fall due, and governments will need to be far more certain than they are today that businesses and individuals will be able to pay their fair share of tax. This will occur in a global governance environment that was already changing radically owing to the impact of digital economies. Now, that is telling you exactly what they're going to be doing: crash the economy and replace it with taxes and a new reset. Well, they're talking about the great global reset. So what they're also doing is they're bringing something in called impact investing, and that is investing in outcomes of human beings. It's called it's all wound up with, we've got the Internet of Things. There's also the Internet of Bodies, which is the Internet of Things is about infrastructure communicating with each other. And the Internet of Bodies is about how human beings will be actually linked up to the AI. Now, this sounds absolutely crazy, but it's happening. They have the ability to do this. And this is the AI that's ready and waiting to literally merge man with machine. And this is the most appalling agenda I mean, obviously human beings will be there, but they will be different human beings in the future. This is what their aim is, that we will somehow, our minds can be merged with the AI. And also the impact investing is about surveilling the human being from cradle to grave via, certainly in education, having the child actually in nursery school and being surveilled and monitored, and everything is fed back into a sort of a globe. It's a form of technological researching, so that every human being has an ID, and that it's their behavior and the way they perform as perfect global citizens in that environment of education is monitored from cradle to grave, so that their idea is that the investors are investing in creating a perfect global citizen, and that if people fall by the wayside, they won't have access to the blockchain, and the investors will only get their money if they actually create the perfect global citizen and the behaviors are right. So when they're surveilling children, it's, you know, who are the leaders, who are the followers, you know, who has empathy, who doesn't have empathy, and slotting them into the right outcomes. Now, this sounds absolutely crazy, but if you Steve Rothschild has written a white paper on it, and it's been developed since the 1990s, and it was piloted at Peterborough Prison in the UK. And I will be doing a talk on this in depth because it's such a complicated subject. And there's a wonderful woman called Alison McDowell who's done a lot of research into it. And if anybody really wants to go into exactly what is happening with the what they call the human capital bonds, which will be traded, and this will be the form of income for the economy, because data is the new gold, is the new way of being able to trade along with the carbon taxes. So there won't be price-based economy. It's going to be impact investing, AI, and all this is linked up to gaming as well, which is another thing, but I won't go into that because it's too much for this talk. But I will be doing another talk on the whole impact investing, human capital bonds, and how this is actually going to be a form of economy, and how we will be literally traded. You know, our human souls will be traded, and it's really quite an unbelievable thing that could be happening, and people have no idea that this is coming, and we really need to get on top, fight it now before it comes, you know.
Yeah, and like for those that don't really know what's going on in China and the social system, like I'm in the third city in Poland, and 5G is just everywhere, and also the cameras are everywhere. It's going to be across Europe what they're doing, where they're controlling everything that you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, there's nowhere really to run, nowhere to hide. I mean, I've got a lot of people saying, oh, well, you know, we'll go abroad. Well, there's nowhere to go that doesn't have all this, you know.
They have the satellites. So there's like Elon Musk. I don't know why people look up to Elon Musk, like he's a hero himself. And Amazon's Jeff Bezos, they're putting thousands of satellites. So even if you're in the Amazon or you're in Costa Rica thinking you're happy on your eco village, not really. They're going to be bombarded with these frequencies everywhere.
And I don't know how. I mean, it's so far advanced, and Elon Musk has already put, you know, we saw Starlink go over here in the west of the country, and you know, lots of people going, oh, isn't it amazing? Look at Starlink going across, and thinking that this was progress. This was something that was going to speed up the whole the technology that we're using. And really, it's almost as though either this has got to happen and humanity has to be destroyed, and something start again, or we have to fight it and stop it before it gets too far, and almost go back in time to a time when we didn't have this technology, because even 4G is bad, you know, yes. For the human being. And we've, you know, we're at this pivotal time where it's do or die. And, you know, I don't have all the answers, but I think all of us, if we come together, we can affect change. I mean, you think what, you know, Gandhi did, and, you know, with being able to peacefully protest and affect the way the government are going. I wonder how much our government actually knows what is going on. There's obviously a massive shadow government behind all our governments. There's this global governance that seems to have infiltrated and got behind all our governments. But I believe there's good people there. And I think there are people that actually are horrified about what is occurring and probably took their eye off the ball. I don't know what they did, but I believe that there are good people in our governments globally who are saying, wow, we can't let this happen. I'm hoping so anyway, because it can't be completely people-led. We have to start it, but we have to get good people with consciences to come on board.
What I'm seeing lately, and because I was asking people, what was frustrating me is a lot of these influencers, they've remained quiet. they're not saying nothing. And I was saying they have to get off the fence, because they're just protecting their numbers. If they start asking the right questions, they're afraid they'll lose their audience. But I'm seeing it. Like even this week, there's 2 people now that have started asking the right questions, and one was even asking, like, is this really fake? And all the comments were like they were on our side. And I thought, and then he started doing more. So if more people can do that, it definitely will wake up a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like the 100 monkey thing, when things get to an exponential tipping point, at that tipping point, then there's a massive surge. And I think that's what we will be experiencing. People, particularly with this new six person thing, I mean, everyone's very confused about it. And what's going to happen at Christmas? It's like the Grinch that stole Christmas. People will not be able to gather as families, and this is what it's about. Also, it's about the breakdown of the family unit, and isolating people. And this is. I mean, I said it in my last talk. It's a form of torture, and psychological coercion, and it's actually damaging, and what's happening to children in schools is damaging.
That's terrible.
I mean, I spoke to someone yesterday, and she works in a school as a teaching assistant, and she said that the year 7s, the little 4-year-olds in her school, are being vaccinated with the flu vaccine. And this shocked me. This is unbelievable. I think she's from Oxford area. And I said, well, she said, oh yeah, it has to be with consent of the parents. But an awful lot of parents are scared about all this.
They've been brainwashed by the media.
Vaccinated. What is in those vaccines? We know that there's a load of awful things in vaccines that cause problems with children. And yet, happily, they're going to get their children vaccinated, which is, why is Bill Gates going for this whole vaccination program? Well, we know why, because it's in that vaccine is stuff that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
In there is stuff that will, sorry, I thought that was off. In there is stuff that will, will actually help the transition from human to machine, the transhumanist agenda. And years ago, I did think that was way, way, way in the future, the transhuman agenda. But actually, it's here with us now, and it's going to be somehow put it. There's nanoparticles. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a scientist, but I've heard that there is stuff in those vaccines. Otherwise, why would there be this push to vaccinate everyone when actually there is not enough evidence of even a virus being around? I think Piers has been trying to get the government to prove, give us proof that there is a virus, because at the moment there is no proof. There's not one shred of evidence to say there's a virus. It's all been
like one thing that shocked me, because there's definitely tracing of it, but the thing that shocked me is they were putting chips in people's hands voluntarily, normally in the corporations, so that they could pay the machines, open the doors and everything. But the reality is it's a tracking chip. And people were agreeing to that around the world in some, that now they can do it in nanotechnology. So they're tiny little chips. They're even spraying it in the air. We're getting nanoparticles.
Yeah.
And they were coming up, because I wrote a book, but I didn't release it. But it was like, I was everything that I wrote, fact checking, I was told, yeah, it's okay, except for the chemtrails. And I just said, I'm leaving this in. And they even came out and admitted that the chemtrails are happening.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I've been criticised for not pushing the whole chemtrail thing. And I've put it on. I've now put stuff on my website. But to be honest, we all get into our sort of part that we understand and that we're putting out. And chemtrails is such a vast thing, and it's been so shadowed in secrecy that I couldn't break through that. Other people have now, and I've put it on my website. But to be honest, it was such a big subject, I couldn't include that. I didn't know enough about it. I couldn't prove anything, and yet it is proved now. And you do have. It's obvious. They even the sun blocking. What did they call it? I can't remember what the operation was called, but when they were chemtrailing to block out the sun, and they said, oh, it's for global warming. Well, this is to stop the sun, to stop global warming. But all it did actually was just create cloud everywhere, and it rained, and there's stuff in that rain, but they found samples of it in the soil. We know that there's heavy metals, there's barium, there's strontium, there's all sorts of things in that are not good for the human body. And they are metals which will almost create you an antennae because the heavy metals are in the body. You become an antennae for this, for the EMFs and everything else that's going on. And this is all part of the agenda, and we're being assaulted on every side. And I think the only way that we can do it is to communicate the way we are, and make people aware. There's nothing else we can do, and that's what I've certainly been trying to do for 10 years. It's only really in the last few months since the pandemic that people have come back to me and said, oh, I thought you were a nut job, but I understand where you're coming from now. So I'm sure you're getting the same thing.
What I'm finding, and I don't know, is it the same with you? A lot of people are afraid to write, comment, but when they meet you, or if you're on a phone call, they go, they are awake, but they're just afraid in case their employer sees it or anything.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of that. There's people, I mean, I talk to people a lot just in shops and everything, and so many people, they're wearing a mask and they say, oh, I think it's a load of rubbish, but they're too scared, that maybe their partner doesn't agree with them or their family doesn't agree. And I've experienced that in my own family. I mean, I've got one daughter who barely speaks to me because she thinks that this is all nonsense that I'm talking. And conspiracy theory, that's the worst thing, or right wing even. I mean, how anybody can, all we ever do is talk about, the power of the people. How can that be in any way interpreted as right wing? So it's crazy at the moment, the fact that, you get put into this raft of ideology that they think, oh, you must support Trump, you must do this, you're right wing. It's rubbish. People, you can take various bits of whatever you believe in. You can't, why have a label? And that's what they love, is labels.
Definitely. And there's one thing that I'm seeing, because I'm constantly trying to think of solutions, and I was shocked recently because there was something like 5 million people in Berlin, and it wasn't on the press. Nobody heard about it. And even in Poland, I done a speech in a Toastmaster club. Not one person had heard about it. And that will show you straight away. So as you're one of the people that's on stage, what I think might help is to ask the audience, because I don't know how many was it, like, you get different figures, BBC would probably say 300 when there was maybe 30,000 or even more. But if you can ask the crowd the next time to go on live and just do a turn around and show the crowd that's there.
Yes. Yeah.
Because then it'll reach a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I was there on the 29th, and it was the most amazing atmosphere. And there were other sort of counter things going on. There was XR was somewhere, and Black Lives Matter was somewhere down near Parliament Square. But actually, Trafalgar Square was all of us, and we, there was something in the press about some man with a flag, a fascist flag. Now, I looked at that photograph, and he was outside the Canadian embassy, and there was nobody around him. Now, I was there, and outside the Canadian embassy, there was thousands of people. That photograph was clearly not taken on the 29th. Without a doubt, that was staged in order to discredit the movement and calling us fascist. And so, of course, that was the only picture that came, was put into the Guardian and the mainstream media was, oh, it was a fascist rally. Rubbish. We're actually campaigning against fascism, against global fascism. For goodness sake, don't try and put that label on us, because you've staged some crazy old man with a flag, and I didn't even know what the flag is. It's kind of like flash. I didn't even know what it was. So anyway, so the atmosphere there was brilliant. It was lovely. It was freedom, not fascism. This is what the new protest on the 26th of this month in Trafalgar Square, 12 o'clock, will be. It's freedom, not fascism. And this is what has to be really the people's march And it's all the people there that I met were just normal people. They were just normal people, not crazies, not like me, people that have researched it for years and years and years. These are people who've just gone, do you know what? There's something really horribly wrong, and I want to, I'm finding out about it, and I'm angry about it, and I'm here because I can't bear what's happening, to our world. And it was great. They were lovely people, and there was, apparently. Trafalgar Square, the capacity of Trafalgar Square is 37,000. It was full. So there was more than 37,000 people there because it was sprawling down Whitehall as well at one point. And there were other protests going on, but nothing to do with us. There was a Black Lives Matter thing on just outside Parliament Square. And of course, once Piers was arrested, it all kind of dissipated because and it was great hearing David Icke speak. He was really good, and it really brought everyone together. And we're going to, there will be the same, David Icke will be there on the 26th, and Piers and a few other people. To be honest, I don't think it should be too many speakers lecturing. It really is the people's protest, and a protest literally from Trafalgar Square, maybe down to Parliament, down to Downing Street and Parliament. There will be things going on to try and counteract it. I don't know how the police will react. Will they try and arrest Piers again? I don't know. It's, we just have to wait and see, but we can't not do anything. We can't stop. We can't, there's no way. And if
that
there's
was the only thing that I think that was a pity when David Icke was speaking. He shouted freedom at one stage and people were chanting, and then he started talking about, listen, it's the police that are going. So his message to the police was very good, but because the people were chanting, it was kind of whistled out. And I think if people can, without being aggressive towards the police, but let the message go, listen, it's your children. Do you think that this isn't going to affect you and your mother and your family? Yeah. And once they take off their hats, it's okay. But that's the only problem. The only people are afraid is because of fines and be getting beaten up, pepper sprayed and battened. If that wasn't there, nobody would be complying.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that all the protesters in Trafalgar Square were being very respectful to the police. The police were being very respectful to the protesters. I did stand quite close to a policeman, and he was on his walkie-talkie, and he said something very relevant, I thought. He said, there's too many of them, we can't break it up. And that meant to me, well, we need more next time.
Exactly.
Because the fact that there were too many and they couldn't break it up was really key. And, at the end of the day, they're there to protect the people and to be of service to the people, and, and to stop any violence. There was no violence. So it was an interesting one. I did notice, I walked down because I was going to meet Piers down outside Downing Street, and I walked down and I couldn't find him because I realised then that he'd been arrested because I'd literally turned away, and he'd been arrested. And I walked down and there was this woman who was trying very hard to wind the police up. She was shouting at them, and I don't know if she was part of the Extinction Rebellion or the Black Lives Matter. I'm not sure who she was, but she certainly didn't seem to be one of our group. And she was really shouting at the police and being absolutely awful to them. And I thought, that's not the way to go. You've really got to get them on our side. Exactly. Because they have families too. They're being subjected to the same tyranny that we are. And they've been told to stop us from at some point they're going to look at us and think, well, do you know what? I'll join them. And that's when it will actually, the tipping point will occur, is when they take their helmets off and say,
exactly.
Do you know what?
And that's why I want, if the people, instead of telling too much information, and if they touch the individual, saying, who do you know that's a doctor that's complying to what's happening in the hospital? Who do you know that's a police officer so that they have the conversations instead of being aggressive. The aggression doesn't work. It's just compassion will make the change.
Yeah, and I believe there's more cities in Germany that are coming out with big protests, and I think Germany really they're shining the light on all this. They know what fascism smells and looks like. It wasn't that long ago, and they can see the signs of what it was like. And I think that's why Germany are really, it's almost like a karmic thing there, and not to get too kind of like woo-woo about it, but it's almost as though the generation that had to grow up after the tyranny that they were subjected to, and had to be part of, and were forced to be a part of, and the psychological operations that they were put under in order for fascism to prevail. They now, it's going full circle. They're saying, no, we've seen this. We know what it is. We cannot agree to this. And I think that's in itself is a very healing thing. And if we can actually, you know, we didn't have that occupation. We didn't, you know, there's other countries that did. And I just feel that we need to really wake up and smell the coffee and know that tyranny is here. Everyone has this idea that our governments are still looking after us and that they have our best interests at heart, and they clearly don't. And to come to that realization is hard. And, you know, it means that you've really got to do your homework. I mean, if you, my website is just a purely information only website. It's sandyadams.uk, but I've just gone through the whole thing. I haven't put a great deal about the pandemic on it at the moment, because it just focuses on the history of Agenda 21 2030 and other things that are coming in. You know, at the moment, the whole rewilding thing is being pushed by the agricultural policies that are going through, where they're encouraging farmers not to farm, but to rewild their land, and to also there's this gene editing thing that's been brought into our agricultural policy, and instead of changing it and saying, right, we're going to have GMOs and being open about it, because they know that would create massive opposition, they've actually amended the existing agricultural policy to include something called gene editing, which luckily the organic farmers have picked up on and have fought it off. And it's something, it's all been brought in by something called CRISPR, which is CRISPR, and it's been really brought in to almost by stealth, but it's been opposed, but only temporarily. They will try and bring that back in. And you know, the idea that the whole plan is to get rid of small farms and to have mega farms. And the document that tells you all about that, and it's a government document, it's the agricultural working group for the food and drink sector, is on my website, and you can see what the future of farming is to be. And actually it's to rewild all the land, but create mega farms, which are not really, farmers can't hand their farms down to their children. You have to be educated on how to run a mega farm with AI, and you know that there's this whole thing about phasing out meat production, and that's all tied up with new zoonotic diseases, as we know. This is all going to come, and food chain, and creating insect biomass, you know, as a replacement protein. Now, all this is actually in that document, and it's a government document. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's how they intend to actually control the food chain, and what they want us to eat, and how they want the food chain to be created, and what you know, what's going to happen with the food production. And it is GMOs, and it's run by AI. And without getting too depressing about it, this is why I'm highlighting it, so we can do something about it. And there's plenty of people that are now. And so I think the more we put the information out and solutions, then, you know, we can fight it. And it's about fighting the GMOs, every single front, fighting the 5G, you know, trying to get all of all the information out, so that people do see that this is actually something that if we don't fight, we're going to lose everything. Yeah.
No, exactly. And like with the GMOs, because unfortunately a lot of people have been brainwashed into thinking GMOs are good, but the research that I have seen is it was causing tumors in rats. We have the same organs as rats, and basically, and I believe they're probably giving all the farm animals the GMO, because who's to check it, who's to prove it? So indirectly it's going into our system.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. We don't know what is GMO and what isn't. I mean, it's all got very mixed up in our food chain. And unless you go to an organic farmer, which I try and do most of the time, and get organic meat and veg, you know, you don't know. Supermarkets, forget it. You know, that they will buy from the cheapest producer. They don't really have any qualms about selling stuff that's GMO. So yeah, you know, and it's, at the moment we do have this you know, the pandemic is being hyped up basically on the back of seasonal flu, as we know, and but they keep talking about something else, you know, so the next one that'll get attention. I don't know whether you saw Bill Gates's clip on YouTube, and he was talking about the pandemic, and then he and Melinda look at each other and he said, oh, but the next one that'll get some attention, talking about the second wave. And you know, I did have this theory because I looked at the website for the United Nations, and in their environmental program, part of their website, they talk about zoonotic diseases and something that jumps from animals to humans. And it would be very, very timely to get people to not be in the countryside, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the end game. And you wonder whether, you know, certainly in that, on that website, on the environmental program, they talk about how deadly the countryside can be, because it's full of terrible plants and animals that have pathogens that can create zoonotic diseases, and how man shouldn't really live in the countryside because they destroy it anyway. And it's all too cleverly woven in to this whole pandemic theory. And you wonder if the next one could emerge in livestock. You know, it could, you know, to completely screw up the food chain. And then say, well, we've got to replace that food chain with something else because it's infected. You know, this is all the plan, and it's all in plain sight on their websites. You know, just look up zoonotic diseases under the United Nations website and it'll all pop up, you know, and you just think, well, this is something that if we can preempt and say this is what they're going to do, maybe people will see that it's all been planned. And calling them out is a big one, you know, all the time, call them out.
Exactly. And I think where we have to go with this is go for the individual. The people that are working for the UN, the people working in the EU, the lobbyists, yeah. You have to go for the individual, because you cannot attack the pharmaceutical, they have too much money. You can't attack the banking industry. Yeah. Yeah. You have to go for the individual. And if there's more people awake, they will have the conversations with their spouses, with their parents, with their children who are part of this. And I think that's how we'll actually get the bigger shift.
Yeah. Quite right. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking at, there's mutterings about something called brucellosis, and I'm doing some research into it. And brucellosis is a zoonotic disease that is carried by livestock of all sorts, pigs, sheep. You know, so it fits the bill in being able to stop meat production. And there was rumblings about it in America having got into the food chain, and that they were trying to recall dairy products and stuff and meat. And I looked up brucellosis, and I grew up as a child in a farming community, and it was talked about in the 1970s and 80s, I think, the brucellosis outbreaks, and they eradicated it in the UK. But it is a pretty nasty, and it can be a chronic disease. It can go on and on. But what I found is when I did my research, it lends itself very, very well to being a bioweapon. And interestingly, it was put on a list by President Obama of one of the 31 diseases that could be used as a bioweapon. And that was actually, it was linked to, he'd actually created that and sent it to the CDC, you know, the Center for Disease Control in America. So, you know, I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, that, who knows what they will try and cook up. I don't want to scare anyone, but if it did happen, at least, you know, the information's out there. I mean, I don't want to preempt what they're going to do, but looking at the United Nations website about a disease in livestock, that would fit the bill. And that, unfortunately, is what they do. They bring out a little thing and they give you a little bit of information, and then it grows and grows and grows, because they've been telling us, yeah, we're going to get a second wave. Well, how did they know that, you know? And they just keep pushing, and it's predictive programming. And I think that's what we're living with at the moment. We're being predictively programmed to accept all this.
No, definitely. Listen, there's so many things I think we can have. I hope to get you back again, because we can delve into a lot of these in more detail. But I love what you're doing, and I like your website is Sandi Adams, and that's Sandi Adams.uk. Is there any other way that people can get in contact with you, or is that
on Facebook? I'm on Facebook. I don't do Twitter and I don't do Instagram, but I'm on Facebook, Sandi Adams on Facebook. You can contact me, and I've got the website, and and I'm happy to talk about this to anyone. At the moment, I'm going to be getting to do my own podcast. At the moment, I've lost my business in the lockdown, basically, and I've been trying to wind all that up, and I just want to go into this more fully, because I have been very distracted by what's been going on with the lockdown, and I understand anyone that's struggling with the lockdown who's got a small business, because it's been hell, and my heart goes out to anyone who has suffered, and the people that have been made unemployed by this. You know, it is getting worse, so that the economy will crash. But I just want to get the word out, and I'm going to be doing more of this. And although I've been doing it for 10 years, I've been doing it very much on the sidelines, and for me it's a passion, and just need to go on with it and make people aware that this is a long-term plan, and it's been put in place by people that really do want top-down global governance and surveillance, and to hook us up with AI, and it's just horrible. Yeah.
Listen, it's been wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for speaking to me. It's been great. Bless you. Thanks, Roy. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. We are on BitChute, YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and share with your friends. Until next week, take care.